Hello, I'm Paul Quinn, and I'm the director of the Chichester Centre for Fairy Tale, Fantasy and Speculative Fictions, and I'm delighted to be here this evening to talk about Doctor Who and politics and the question, has it all gone too woke? And I'm even more delighted to be joined by two of our current students. We have got
Meg Hare,
Eva Craig.
two sterling examples of year two at the university, two very committed Doctor Who fans, and we're going to examine this question about whether Doctor Who has gone too woke and the question of whether Doctor Who has always been political. So to start off, I wonder if you could both say what your entry point to Doctor Who was.
My entry point was Eccleston and David Tennant, so right at the beginning of New Who. And I do remember it, even though it only aired when I was like 2 years old. It was on reruns so often that I feel like I've always just watched it. And yeah, I watched it throughout and then kind of ended at Capaldi's era. And my family just kind of lost interest in it.
Why did your family lose interest? Because this is a common complaint about Capaldi's.
Look, Capaldi, honestly, fantastic actor. It was the writing. We were all just very let down with it. And I think Moffat just spiraled, as he does.
And Meg, where's your jumping on point?
my jumping off point is the first ever Matt Smith episode.
So 11th hour.
Yes, with the introduction of Amy Pond. And I remember sitting down and my parents were like, "You're gonna love this. You're gonna." They were right. And we watched it every single time. I'd come home early from class to watch this on like special occasions. And then we managed to successfully get through one of Whittaker's seasons, and then it dropped off significantly. We did not watch it as a family anymore, and then obviously I moved to university, so I've not really been catching up too much recently.
So you've not seen Flux?
Mm-hmm. I rewatched. So like I watched one of those things of all the things you need to know before the specials, and that's how I learned about the Flux.
I have seen Flux.
Yeah, I haven't seen like the actual episode. I've just seen clips and people explaining it. It's interesting.
I think I binged the weekend that I moved into the house. I binged all of 13, which was a choice. You know.
And what's your relationship with old Who?
I've watched it all.
Okay.
Surprise. It's like the Shakespeare thing. I enjoy it. My dad consistently references it in conversations. So thank you, Tom Baker, for having that relationship to my dad and I. And yeah, I watched it. Didn't really enjoy it. I can't really get over a lot of the special effects. My brain doesn't like it very much. But you know, it's a bit of fun.
Yeah, I haven't actually watched any of the old Who, just my dad constantly referenced, especially Tom Baker, that was his favourite Doctor. So constant references of that, but I have seen, like, I researched storylines and things to see if New Who was the only political one, and it hasn't been, it has been political the whole time.
Yeah, it's an interesting, it's not even really a debate. A lot of it appears to be angry men on Twitter who appear to be long-term Doctor Who fans, but who seem to have not spotted all the politics that's there.
Yeah,
it's just the Star Wars thing, isn't it?
You'll have to expand on
that. Okay, so my dad has watched. Going to be referencing my dad a lot for this, apparently. He's watched all the original Star Wars, and he watched them as they came out, and he was a really big fan. And then we came to the newest trilogy, which is Force Awakens, starts with Force Awakens, and he took me and like my closest friends and my cousin for some reason to see it. And I remember him leaving, and he went online thinking everyone's going to be like, "It's Star Wars is back," and it was just people not enjoying it. They're like, "That's not real Star Wars. Why is there a black guy in Star Wars actually?" And he's always been a very firm believer of, well, Star Wars is Star Wars. Like the new trilogy is as Star Warsy as Star Wars with Star Wars, meaning the new Doctor Who is also as Doctor Who as Doctor Who. It just is basically just based on your opinion and whether or not you have mentally grown from when you last saw it. So yeah, that's I just think the politics thing is kind of dumb.
I suspect that's right. Neither of you are on Twitter.
I am.
You are on Twitter.
Not willingly.
So you've been watching the collective breakdown on Doctor Who Twitter for about the last 10 days, 12 days.
Or are we going to take it all the way back and start with Whittaker's casting? Because I think that was the beginning of the end.
And that's really where we're going, isn't it? Because how much of this is a natural endpoint of the hashtag Not My Doctor mob, who are going to find themselves, I think, twisting come Christmas Day when the Not My Doctor turns into a racist device.
That's not going to be.
I think it already is.
Yeah, I think so too, looking at some of the news. What seems to particularly agitated is where the re-edit of An Adventure in Time and Space.
Yes, I saw that, where they were, because originally that was Matt Smith.
Yes.
Opposite. Yeah.
But they've got a picture of naked and greased up. But this may be saying more about their own closeted sensibilities and their own homophobia and their racism. So it's a delightful package. But I think the recent incident is the Davros incident.
Yes, which I wasn't aware of till this morning. I disagree with Davies saying that having Davros in a wheelchair associates disability with evil. I've never seen it that way with Davros, and also that just makes the fact that it makes his whole personality about his disability, when in actual fact you can have good and evil characters with disability. They just happen to have a disability, and I just think he's blown it out of proportion.
I think you have to look at the pattern though, because I mean, if we look, I don't know, 50 years back, every queer character on TV was the villain. We had queer-coded villains for the last 100 years, let's say, and only recently have queer aspects and like queer visual like tools have been seen as good. And I think if you're looking at that repeated behavior, I mean, how many disabled characters can you think of that are full stop disabled characters, specifically disabled characters that are good? Because I mean, even recently, so like the Harley Quinn Birds of Prey movie, that should have had Oracle in it, which is a very famous disabled character in DC, and it didn't. And then it was like, what's the point if you're going to call it Birds of Prey? If you have to sort of incorporate all of that, if that makes sense. It's just, yeah, I think it was a kind of dumb thing to say, but also you've got the wider picture of things. It's not, I mean, the Kingsman movies, all the villains or most of the villains are disabled. They're some of the most popular movies of the last decade.
I mean, I think what Davis is doing there, and it's an interesting, just in the conversation, how we respond to text differently. Davis is looking at a much longer tradition whereby, certainly in the medieval period, you read physical disability as a sign of character. So famously, Richard III. So of course, the Richard III Society spent a long time arguing that he didn't have the limp and he didn't have the humpback and he didn't have the withered arm. The problem is then when they discovered the skeleton in the car park in Leicester, all the evidence suggested that he did indeed have curvature of the spine, and therefore you would read that as a humpback, and therefore their premise that he didn't look like this, therefore he didn't behave like this, kind of falls away. I mean, I think Davros is a fundamentally boring character. I don't know why they bothered, because there isn't really much else you can do with Davros. Davros kind of warps the Dalek stories from Genesis to the Daleks onwards. There's a reason why Davis didn't bring Davros back until series 4 and stuff. There's not really much else you can do, because if you look at old Who, Genesis, yes. Destiny, what's the point? Resurrection, one of the worst Doctor Who stories ever made. Revelation of the Daleks is a great story. It's a very strange story. And then Remembrance of the Daleks is one of the best stories of the 1980s. But you don't really need Davros again.
I think, is it not interesting though what they did with Capaldi when he meets young Davros?
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I think they could have done a lot better with that. But I think having that such a rare good move from Moffat, like having, is it Moffat or Moffat?
Well, it's usually Moffat, but the fact you're calling him Moffat suggests he's both fat and he's Grand Moff Tarkin from Star Wars, who of course is who Davros now looks like. Weirdly enough, he's a different type of villain, or a different villain. I think the problem with the Capaldi died in two-part at the start of series 9 is when they pulled Davros out of the chair and he's got no legs. It then is a wheelchair. Because a lot of the agitation online was, oh, it's a life support system, it's not a wheelchair, therefore you can't read it in that way, and that's clearly not true. So I think a lot of the current episode dates from that, but I think you're right, we have to go all the way back to Jodie Whittaker's casting. And even Peter Davison gets involved in that, doesn't he, as I recall. Peter Davison wasn't happy with that casting. Oh. Colin Baker was all over it, he thought it was a great thing. Davison, in a curious misstep, and given that he's the father-in-law of the Doctor, and he's the daughter of the Doctor's daughter, but it's not his daughter.
Yeah, it's also such a weird move, because obviously Moffat was involved in that. And the only other time we had a female Doctor is when he wrote a sketch. Basically having, wouldn't it be so funny if the Doctor was a woman? Imagine. And I think that is possibly the reason why it went so badly. I'm willing to blame on that man.
I mean, if you go back to when Tom Baker was leaving, and there's a very famous interview of him and I think Sue Lawley, and she asked him any clues as to who's taking over, which actor, and he said, "You're assuming it's a man." So Baker puts out as a flyer there, but of course, the second Romana is essentially a Doctor substitute. If you look at Orson Nyman, if you want to talk to yourself or enjoy some scenery chewing from the great Graham Crowden and some ballet dancers as Minotaurs, Romana plays a Doctor. She's essentially fills a Doctor's role there. And of course, Missy is really introducing the possibility of changing the Master and therefore the Doctor. But I mean, what did you? I mean, Aoife, you were part of the departures at Capaldi. Did you watch any Whittaker, or have you watched any Whittaker subsequent to that?
Yeah, I did give Whittaker a go. I think my family tried to watch the first series. I don't think we could finish it to the end. Mostly because of the very clunky writing. Like I was really rooting for her because I thought it's brilliant. We have something, fresh blood, and I'd seen her in Broadchurch, and I thought she was fantastic in that. Yeah, but we were just very let down.
The Rosa Parks episode, I think, is what did it for me.
Yes, I think that was it was just so poorly handled.
Why are we making just the guy? I don't even know what he's the news, Graham, whatever. Oh, yeah. Why are we making him the guy that had to make Rosa Parks do that? That's an insane decision. Yeah. There's no way they could have put that through and been like, that's going to leave a lasting impact. And that's not going to get made fun of or ridiculed. I
mean, there was a very funny posting on Twitter by somebody defending the Chibnall era historicals or pseudo-historicals, really. And I'd never heard of Lord Byron or Rosa Parks until I saw those episodes. And you're left thinking, when did you leave school?
Yeah.
Did you go to school? Have you ever watched horrible histories?
Maybe they were just American.
No, they weren't American because they'd know Rosa Parks. That was the point. Was are you American? No, I'm British. And so this heap of abuse heaped on this person. But I mean, the issue there is it kind of Graham is almost a white saviour narrative coming in to tell Rosa Parks what to do.
It's just like
that's deeply upsetting to watch.
The most cartoonish version of White Knighting, and they did it as soon as they had a female Doctor.
So this accusation about it's become too political, and what's interesting, I think, is that the press haven't really picked up on this.
No, it's the fans that have latched onto it.
And certainly they were trawling Twitter, and they got some of the Davros feedback. And interesting, Ian Levine was mentioned. So young, you don't know who Ian Levine is, which would be a tragedy for Ian Levine. Ian Levine is a superfan. He was the continuity advisor in the 1980s. He had another career as a music producer, incredible Northern Soul. He worked with Take That. Gary Barlow is incredibly unkind about him in his biography about how many topic bars and skittles that Ian Levine eats. But Ian Levine rescued a number of significant stories from being jumped by the BBC in the 70s. He found the Daleks ready to be destroyed. Levine was really very angry about this change to Davros, and as a wheelchair user himself, he felt that the wheelchair community hadn't been consulted about this. But he wasn't, in The Sun, he's just a Twitter user. So there's a weird sense in which only fandom knows who he is, and a lot of fans don't care. But I don't think they're really looking at this wider issue at all. Essentially because they've given up. And the kind of the blood was on there from certainly Jodie Whittaker's casting. And now I suggest they're waiting to see how things go.
Well, you said earlier it was the fans that sort of picked up on this, but I'm going to go back to referencing something that's not particularly relevant or is relevant to very few.
We can make it all relevant.
Okay. You haven't watched Community. No. Have you watched Community?
No.
Okay, fair enough. I'll give you 3 people that watch this will understand this reference. But there's a character called Ahmed, and he is autistic, and he has like a hyperfixation on a Doctor Who spin-off called Inspector Spacetime. And in season 4, they go to an Inspector Spacetime con. Interestingly, it has the guy that plays Nardole in it. He plays a Doctor Who super fan. And it's like a very weird meta thing because it was quite close to when he was casting in Doctor Who. And even within Community, within this American idea, the idea of a female doctor like was literally mapped off. Like they're like, I think the phrase is, oh, I mean, there was a female companion. She was bad. She was really bad. And they like completely shrug it off. And it's really interesting that they put this idea on Ahmed, who is historically a very chill character, like a very accepting character. And it's not laughed off at all in the show. So even within the show and within a completely different fan base, the idea of that wokeness of Doctor Who is still present to people, because obviously it's an American show. Majority of the audience would not have watched any Doctor Who. And it's just, they go to Inspector Con, and he plays a guy called Toby Nado, and yeah, it's literally this deranged Doctor Who fan who is so obsessed with having another friend that likes Doctor Who, he locks him in a TARDIS to try and like, I'm waiting for it to kick in when you start loving me, is the scene. But it's just so interesting that despite that not being connected to Doctor Who at all, and having clearly no one on the team that's a fan of Doctor Who, they still were like, we need a nerdy character to like something, and we need it to be kind of easy to make fun of. Let's go for something woke. It's just that was like 2013, I think that season aired.
So that's just as Capaldi's been announced, but before the first series, which is 2014, when Capaldi first has a full season. He does turn up in a cameo in Day of the Doctor, Attack Eyebrows. But of course, there's a character which is the Castellan is in that. Castellan, when he regenerates into a woman. So again, Moffat is already introducing this notion that the male doctor can become a female doctor, or become they. I know in the trailers for the Disney version of the franchise of this, what we're looking for now, the Hugh Gatwa is referring to the Doctor as they. So very clearly now we've moved into, in that point, quite a subtle use of pronouns. Because I thought more people would pick up on that, would start to get agitated, because there's a weird conservatism there in fandom, even though you'd think the programme wouldn't have that type of fan base.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting being in that space and looking at it and seeing, you can tell on Twitter who has just basically ignored Whittaker's existence. Because if you see them referring to the Doctor as a he, you know they don't acknowledge Whittaker. If it's a they, then you're like, okay, it sort of is quite easy to eliminate opinions that I don't care about using that rhetoric. But
I also think a majority of those fans are like old Who fans, like my dad, who was very dismissive of having a female doctor and now a black doctor. and is still kind of just waiting for it to crumble.
Tom Baker's not coming back.
Yeah.
If he's seen the photographs of Tom Baker in the Radio 20th anniversary, they're really quite upset. And Tom Baker is both very old and he looks very ill. So I don't think he's going to swoop in and save the franchise for your dad or for anyone, because the viewing figures suggest he doesn't need saving. I think Star Beast is the most watched episode since 2018.
Yeah, I think having Doctor and Donna back has saved it, because it was very, very low.
I still think Capaldi was a sick doctor. I maintain the 12th Doctor is the best doctor, and I know I'm going to get to.
You won't get sick from me, Meg. I love Capaldi. I love that. I think it was a misstep to cast someone old.
Really?
But I think he was a brilliant doctor, and I think there's some amazing stuff in those 3 seasons.
Heaven Bent and Hellsent.
I love
objectively some of the best doctor episodes ever.
Face the Raven.
Oh gosh, Face the Raven really got me.
It's incredible. I mean, Jenna Coleman is awesome as well. I mean, they were lucky.
If she wasn't Fanderized, I think she would have been gone down as one of the best.
The one thing I really didn't like that they did with her character was she'd often have references. It was basically queerbaiting, because she'd have references of, oh yeah, I remember when I was with Jane Austen, oh, she's a good kisser, and then never elaborated on that. And it would just, it really just.
And then play on the romance between her and the Doctor. That freaks me out.
That was very strange.
I really think Rose and Ted are awful, and I genuinely get upset every time they try and like create that shit.
It's very creepy when Matt Smith is given the line in a skirt that's just a bit too short, because it sexualizes those characters in the ways that those two don't work like that. I don't think. I think Matt Smith was brilliant. I think of all the Doctors in the revival, he's able to do old man trapped in young man's body. I think there's material in that 5th season, Your Jump On Point, but it's as good as anything you're going to see. I think when he's in the Pandorica at the end, it's heartbreaking. His speech in Stonehenge, I don't like, his big speech.
Also, the way they make Amy obsessed with him. You're going to snug him on your wedding day.
Yeah, that was very weird. Especially since it's like then you have Rory for the rest of it.
Yes.
But you start off with adultery.
Yes.
And Rory's like, hot take, maybe one of the best companions.
I love
in his way that he is so easily able to cut the Doctor down, and the way that he shows he's more intelligent than the Doctor. So, I mean, The Last Centurion, amazing choice of an arc. But it's just like, and then we just go back to making fun of him.
Yeah.
I think Doctor Who has a problem when there's too many in the TARDIS.
Yes.
As I'll discuss in my lecture next week, which you can watch on video. There's an issue around sexuality in the TARDIS and Old Who. That one way you write characters out in the TARDIS is that they become sexual, because there's a sense in which there's a group of they're meant to be girls around puberty, and once they hit puberty, they have to go. Susan, Vicky. There's a very old reading of Fury from the Deep whereby Jamie and Victoria have had sex on that last night, therefore she has to go. Jo Grant famously gets married. Sarah doesn't, because of course she's the great Virginia figure. Leela, they write her up by that marriage nobody believes. New Who's discourse around sexuality and active sexuality is quite different, but even there, Amy and Rory's child being that's the great mistake on Moffat's part, that he doesn't resolve that question around what happens to River in an effective fashion. Years ago, I was teaching summer school, and there was an American student, and she Doctor Who t-shirt, and some, what do you make of it? He was really angry that he hadn't resolved it, because of course he could have done it in a couple of lines. Rory and Amy's fate, because they're sexually active, they have to go. And of course, there's that back in time. They're back to the 1930s. Their daughter is trapped in the 1960s, therefore they could have met her. That's a line of dialogue. It's the same way that he can't resolve the end of the cracks properly. It's clearly River that blows up the TARDIS.
Yeah.
And the Papal mainframe, that could just as easily be River from the library computer.
That's a problem with all of that. He starts and has an amazing idea and doesn't know how to finish it. And I think he does that with a lot of his female characters as well, with River, and then also with Clara being the
Impossible Girl.
Yeah, that's the line. he
Like
doesn't.
his pain by the recollection.
Well, because he
I'm
doesn't,
really upset by it.
he doesn't make them characters. He just makes them kind of things to save the Doctor, and they're not fully realised in themselves.
Are they Mary Sue?
I think the easiest way to point this out is Sherlock. Obviously, his other most famous thing,
Which does wreck
Apart
Doctor
from-
at that point.
Jekyll and Hyde, which I think he wants us to forget about.
We remember.
We know. Irene Adler.
Yeah.
Irene Adler literally is the coolest character in the books. She's sick. She outsmarts Sherlock. But a woman can't do that.
Yeah.
But a woman, because he also is the queer bait in Sherlock. It all goes back to his inability to write female characters. And I think that Mary Sue-ification of all of them is one of the greatest downfalls. And I think he relies so heavily on the relationship between the actors that he's just like, I can get away with writing anything because like they're clearly having fun. It's like you'd need to be fired.
What about Bill though?
I love Bill.
Because there's a
Thank
significant
you.
change, I think, in series 10. Once Jenna Coleman leaves and the glorious Paul Quinn appears, and you have a very different type of season. I mean, part of the problem with Moffat is you have 3 seasons where they can't quite decide what the Doctor is going to be like, and I think they get it right in 10 when he's the kind of professorial figure with Nardole and Bill. So what do we make of Bill?
I love Bill. I think she was one of the first bits of lesbian representation I ever saw on TV, and I've immediately bonded with her in my head. I love her a lot. I also think the lack of any chance of sexual thing, like the way she pokes fun at, you still call yourself Tiny Walls though, like, just the complete shutdown of any idea of anything romantic is perfect, and it's what's needed, and it completely gets rid of the creepiness of Clara and 12.
Yeah, that was very creepy. It was unsettling.
Oh, it's that whole
because she fancied him when he was younger, and then he now fancies her.
Clara, I'm not your girl. I'm not your boyfriend.
And she's like, I never saw you like that.
I didn't say it was your mistake. It's
horrible.
Who wrote?
I mean, there's presumably the issue. I think that Clara is probably meant to leave at the end of series 8. I think the implication is, in order to make sense of Listen, that she's pregnant with Danny Pink's child. Of course, once they don't have her pregnant with Danny Pink's child and Danny Pink is dead, the whole business about her being the ancestor of Orson Pink in Listen, it makes no sense whatsoever. I suspect that the revelation was meant to be that when she wears the dressing gown all through Last Christmas, at the end you're meant to discover that she's pregnant, but then she's not.
12's hatred of Danny Pink as well.
It was very strange.
I find that in The Caretaker deeply uncomfortable because it looks like racism.
It does, but also I think they realize that mistake though with Bill because they have him like just straight up overtly punch a racist. So thanks.
Yeah.
But that could have been one of the best if they'd continued with it. I think that could be the best trio that has ever been in the TARDIS. Danny Pink, Clara Oswald, and the Doctor. I think that would have been amazing. The chemistry between Pink and the Doctor would have been amazing, and seeing that idea of that soldier and viewing, because also this is obviously as the 12 is coming to terms with the "you're a good Dalek." I think that could have been a real, but I think they were too lame to do it. I think they were wusses, and I think they should have gone for it because I feel like that's what they were leading up to. Because why else would Pink find out, and why else would he be so integral as a sideman?
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought about that.
Aoife, what do you make of Bill and 10, or have you read? Because you Capaldi's your jumping off, your leaving point.
Yeah, no, I did see some of her first season, and I did enjoy her character because it did feel really, because she was always poking fun at the Doctor and didn't take him as seriously as the other companions. And her storyline with her girlfriend was very sweet, and I really did enjoy that because it wasn't handled that she was just a lesbian. It was still a love story that anyone could have had. And I did, I thought Bill was actually handled quite well, surprisingly. But no, I agree with the Danny. That whole thing with Danny, basically just the aggression they had towards each other made no sense. And yeah, it was like Capaldi's doctor was territorial over Clara. Very strange.
If they made it a father relationship, I think they could have done it really well.
Yeah, which would have been fine, but then it was a kind of a romantic one, which was.
I mean, they may be haunted by a very old ghost in Doctor Who, because famously Susan initially is just meant to be a teenager traveling with this old man, and Anthony Coburn, the writer of the first 4 episodes with Bunny Weber, but it's only Coburn's name on the title sequence. He suggests people might think there's impropriety in that relationship, and therefore Susan has to become the Doctor's granddaughter, which causes all kinds of trouble, because it shifts who your identification point is in that first block of episodes. It's not the teenage girl, it becomes the teachers in their 20s and 30s, and that changes, I think, the nature of the program. And those kind of, clearly Ian and Barbara, there's the argument that they've had sex at some point in the romance, because at the start of it, it's all very post-coital, it's essentially a holiday, and you don't tend to get that sort of mature couple. And there's always an essential immaturity in how you write about relationships in Doctor Who, until probably Amy and Rory, and even then it's undercut because of the point that Amy's wanted to jump the Doctor at various points, and then goes back to it.
And at no point do they show Rory particularly mad about it.
No.
He's like, oh, I get it actually.
Yeah, I understand. I'm like, what?
No.
So then, to where we are currently, but also where we were with Davis and Donna, because that's a very different type of companion to what we usually, what we have seen up to that point in New Who, what we've seen subsequently. So, as Tennant viewers and having seen the most recent 2 episodes, what do we make of Donna as a character, as a companion, and that relationship?
Yeah, she's still my favourite. Again, I think it's probably why you like Bill so much, because she can poke fun at him, can kind of be just as brilliant and angry, and she's on the same level as him. She isn't just fawning after him like Martha was. And Rose, and no, she holds her own in the episodes, and it was very refreshing to see that again. Yeah, just them together, just being like really good friends instead of having a romantic slant on it, was just refreshing and comforting. No.
Is there someone in the room who doesn't like Donna?
The tension of us living together is interesting. I like her. Don't get me wrong. I like her. Something about it freaks me out. I can't put my finger on why. I don't know if it's because she's, I presume, the oldest female companion there has been.
Yes.
So they kind of, and the fact she is the only female companion that I know of. Yeah, from Tennant, is she not the only female companion not in love with the Doctor?
Yes.
That's weird. Weird choice. Also, it's like the Bill thing, where it's like, Bill's a sick character, good for her, love that. Why is the first companion that's not in love with the Doctor in like several seasons a lesbian? Why did you have to make that decision?
That's true.
Yes.
Like it's kind of paints the Doctor, like the character of the Doctor in any iteration, as like a self-insert character. For a lot of, you know what, you get me though, right? For a lot of the young men that are watching it, because I think because of the lack of female representation, or good female representation, I presume the character base for Doctor Who is primarily male and younger men.
Historically.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, like that's probably going to be changing now, hopefully, or it has been changing. But I do think the idea of I could do that. I could be a Time Lord, and I could have all these women, all these very conventionally attractive women, just falling over themselves to get to me. That's creepy. That's weird.
I think there is something to that, of course, because it's not a character that carries a gun. Not a character that tends to be physically forceful. Tom Baker occasionally. There's the notorious story Caesar Doom, where he does wield a gun and he twists John Chalice so Boise from he falls the horse's neck in a way that did a child do it at home, it could cause serious damage. What's weird in that episode is the main villain, Harrison Chase. There's clear implications that Chase is homosexual, and he's fulfilling a kind of the type of stereotype that you rightly referred to at the start there, that he doesn't like to be touched, he only communes with plants, and his attacks on the physical body, feeding bodies, including Sarah's body, into essentially a meat grinder for making compost. You can see those type of things. I mean, what's interesting, of course, is that Doctor Who famously has had a large gay following. So to your point about the young men, there's a group definitely who are looking, I could do that. But then there's this similar group who probably aren't looking at the conventionally beautiful companions, but are still thinking that, because there's a sense there that the Doctor is defying the kind of stereotypes around masculinity, and therefore opens up a space for both straight and homosexual men. In New Who, clearly a problem for some of the older fans, how it's now reflective of real life. But can the writing actually respond to that? I mean, John Barrowman, for example. John Barrowman does all the heavy lifting for the publicity in series 1, because of course Eccleston had war by that point. But the way Captain Jack is written, it's not particularly subtle as a discussion about homosexuality or bisexuality in a way that not must we talk about we can talk about Torchwood if we want. Well, yeah, but let's talk. Yeah, because I think I mean Torchwood is a strange thing, isn't it? Because it was designed to be not watchable by Doctor Who's core audience, because it was meant to be adults only. And then, of course, you had what they used to do Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They'd edit it and show it tea time on a Friday night on BBC Two. Oh, yes. But there are episodes of Torchwood where it becomes incomprehensible, because you certainly haven't got that, like, I've watched you come line, whatever it is, from early on in the first season with, oh gosh, I've forgotten his name. He's there with Eve Miles. Yeah. Who I've met. It's very short, Eve Miles. So what about Jack and Torchwood?
I don't like it.
You don't like him, or you don't like the show, or both?
No. I think Torchwood is fun to watch. I think it's adults only, because I think you have to be drinking to enjoy it.
Yeah, there is that thing about what does it makes it mature. People have sex and they swear. It doesn't really mature at all.
I think if you did a shot every time you cringed at Torchwood, that would be great. I think that's what we should do for New Year's.
Drunk Torchwood view then, everyone.
Come to ours. But I think I hate how they represent Jack. I hate how they go for every single stereotype, and then they seem to go, oh my god, it's too on the nose. Oh my god, he's bi, actually he likes women, which makes it worse.
Well, see, that's what made me uncomfortable, because I am bi myself, and I was like, there's very little good bi representation.
Yes.
And yeah, the way they handled it was horrific, and I think they did it very well, kind of subtly in some ways in Doctor Who, the bi aspect, not the but yeah, when they moved it to Torchwood, it just,
although hot take, great romance with Yanto.
Though Yanto isn't gay at the start, is it? No. Because Yanto's girlfriend is Cyberwoman, one of the worst pieces of Doctor Who.
That was why would you bring that up?
That episode
written by Chris Chibnall.
Obviously.
Of course it was.
Because what else do you want other than a Cyberwoman converted in a way that the new series hasn't been doing, in essentially metal bikini fighting the pterodactyl?
Yeah, I think that should be the thumbnail for this.
That's the podcast title: Cyberwoman bikini fighting pterodactyl.
That was one of the worst episodes I think I saw of theirs.
But I just think they got so close to something that could have been really good. I remember crying the first time I watched the ending of it all, and now I rewatch it and I'm like, God, I was such a loser.
The ending of
their romance.
Right.
The like final goodbye.
Yeah.
I remember being like, oh my God. And now I'm just watching it and I'm like, that's how starved I was for gay representation in media. And I just think it's so odd that the first blatantly queer, and he's still hitting on the Doctor. chill.
Well, I mean, is John Barrowman going to be back?
Hopefully not.
Is the other thing, because
We can get like
local difficulties with John Barrowman means I don't know that he will be back in the new series, which brings us to the current crisis amongst fandom of Star Beast. And although I don't like Wild Blue Yonder either, but the Star Beast seems to particularly irk them around the figure of Rose. So what do we make of that? Has it gone too far? Is there a problem there? Is it good to see the representation, but there's an issue with the representation?
Yeah, so it was great to see their attempts at like a trans character who was, you know, fully out, but the writing was incredibly clunky, very on the nose. It's not at all how people speak. Like one of the first lines where she's in the room with the doctor and the Meep, and she has to stop the doctor and say, "You haven't asked about his pronouns yet." But there's like, that doesn't feel natural whatsoever. And then right at the end, just very clunky dialogue.
The invention of a dead name, that freaks me out. So there's a scene where they're introducing her, and to make it clear that she's trans, because obviously they couldn't just have a trans woman without making it clear she's trans. They have bullies walk past and be like, "Jason, how are you?" Why? Because also I forgot her name, but the actress is obviously a trans woman herself. Yeah. Even if it's acting, that seems cruel. That seems rude, and it feels. I presume, obviously, I don't know her. I can't be like, she was deeply offended by it. Why are we trying to introduce a trans character to Doctor Who and immediately making her suffering a part of her character? Can we not just have a happy trans story? There's no need for this. It's with all queer characters in Doctor Who. Even Bill, who I think did have a happy ending, if they're queer, their queerness is interlinked with like a deep sadness or a deep tragic trauma. They can't just be happy. And I think that's possibly the worst way you could ever do representation. Because it's the Eddie Redmayne movie where he plays a trans woman. And you're like, what are you doing? Yeah. I kind of want to hit him over the head a little bit, but
I suppose because there was a furore on Bill being shot in World Enough and Time, wasn't there? And I suspect Bill's sexuality was lost beneath the discourse around race, because there's this perception that both with the death of Danny Pink and the apparent death of Bill at that point in the episode, was it then Lisa conversion into a sideman, and then of course the being saved by the pilot figure, that it's a question of Moffat having an issue around what to do with black characters, black and ethnic minority characters, and that almost that the sexuality is lost beneath that. But that's fascinating, Meg, that we've got this additional problem there, and in a season that looks more progressive than a lot of the material around it, because Bill is a character first, and this is an important element to it. It's not the only element to it, but then you get this ending whereby almost her tragedy becomes Doctor's tragedy, and she becomes secondary to that, because this is about his failure.
They throw a chair. They throw a chair, and I think it's unreal as well with the race aspect of it. There are several lines where she they go back and they have to pass. Obviously.
I know, but that's an important point, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
New Who companions have a past in a way that old Who companions rarely did.
Yeah.
And therefore, what you put into that past becomes significant, and how you write about that, or not write about that. I mean, Rose's family background is interesting when you compare it to Martha's, because Martha's kind of looks like quite a middle-class white fantasy around an ethnic minority family, whereby you can't offend, except the dad has to have this kind of token girlfriend, and the son has a girlfriend and a child that he's not with. It's kind of being progressive and not at the same time.
Yasmin, for 13, her family dynamic, I think, was done well.
Yeah.
I believe that as a character, like a family. Sorry, no, I just remembered all the queer bait again. I got a bit angry.
But that's good, Meg. That's the point, isn't it? That we've got this argument about it's gone too progressive, too woke for a group of angry men in their 50s and their younger acolytes who probably should be near computers. And yet we can find, even on the other side of the argument, there's issues with the progressiveness that seems to have offended people on the other side of the argument.
As a lesbian, genuinely, that's part of the reason I couldn't watch Over 13 when it's coming out, because the aggressiveness of it felt like being made fun of. It was really weird. It was like, because yeah, they do all like the, oh my god, Clara and the Doctor, like all of that stuff, and people are so happy to ship them, and like they feed into that online, like the Doctor Who accounts, and then you have Yasmin and the Doctor, who I think are a better pairing than Rose and Ten. Sorry. I think they're a better pairing than Clara in 11 and or 12. I think that they're done fantastically. And then they just don't do anything with it. They're just like, it would be funny if they kissed. Anyway. Like, anyway, let's kill off. Let's like push people out of the TARDIS for a sec. Like, what on earth?
Well, they didn't know how to handle that many people in the TARDIS.
No, I think that was a stupid decision.
There was too much. Like, it was good in episodes where the end of time, where you have all these characters who are individually like proper characters, or they come together at the end. But if they were in the TARDIS the whole time, it would never work.
Yeah.
And then they just tried to do that. That's too much.
I mean, the only time you can get away with a large number in the TARDIS is probably in Hartman's one, because you've got stories that are running for 6 or 7 weeks. They're part of a continuous narrative that's running for 42 weeks, and you've got, frankly, better written characters like Ian and Barbara who can carry 2 episodes while William Hart's on holiday, or when Peter Purvis, who's one of the great under-praised figures in our Doctor Who at that period, he can carry essentially a story, while Hartman's playing the Dubliners. I mean, Chibnall, of all people, should know that you can't overpopulate the TARDIS, because of course he was at the forefront of fan criticisms in the 1980s. And it doesn't work 3 plus the Doctor and the TARDIS for Peter Davison. It certainly doesn't work in the new, only the types of times you're talking about. So what really we're probably suggesting is to get rid of Graham and Ryan much sooner and just have Yasmin carry.
Also, insane that they made the least memorable character the only black person in the TARDIS.
Yeah.
They did not even try with Ryan.
His shtick is he's got dyspraxia.
Yeah, they're like, he's disabled. Okay, same. And?
I mean, if you look, and I love that one when Andrew Carpenter is script editor in seasons 24, 25, and 26, so right at the end of the real qualitative uptake. And Carpenter really wants to talk about racism because that's his generation. So you know the scene. Because you've seen it in Remembrance of the Daleks, where Ace is staying in the boarding house and she finds the sign that says no colours, and of course then you discover that the army sergeant that Ace might be in love with is a terrible racist and is hanging around with neo-Nazis. But of course the problem there is, although you have in each of the episodes in season 25 a black character, so immediately more black characters you would have had an entire season 5 years earlier, they're all associated either with slavery or music, because all black people are into rap or jazz. That's what it comes down to. So you've kind of got a tension there of, this is great that you've got the figures on the screen, but you've kind of slipped into cliches or stereotypes. And you've got the same thing in modern Who now, I think, around, weird enough around race, but certainly around sexuality.
And with Ryan as well, so I don't have dyspraxia, but I'm autistic. And it affects me. They're like obviously neurodivergencies, so it's kind of similar. I don't feel like in every conversation I have, unless I know I've done this with you, where I've been like, that's come across wrong, let me clarify it. Just a quick reminder about this. I can't do tone. I'm not outing myself as autistic to every random person I meet.
Yeah.
That's
it
not
doesn't
safe.
have to be in conversation every time you speak.
It's not safe, and especially as a black man, he would have understand that, I'm sure, more than I did. I do. It's not. What on earth? It's like, oh, I don't think they had a disabled person writing.
Yeah, that's why. Is it again back to your point about the clunkiness around trans character and trans representation in Starbeast? Intention good, but actually execution bad, because it's a sense of, we have to almost wear a name badge to say this becomes the character. So Ryan is showing the same mistake is being made over and over again.
difficult to watch because I know they were trying to do good.
And difficult to criticize them as well.
Yeah, but with the new episodes, I just hate it. I just really don't like it. It feels, and the cruelness to make them do it. Not having someone else be like overt about it and then go, can you chill?
Yeah, it's
chill?
the actual family members that make the biggest deal out of it.
This is the star we were talking about now,
Yeah.
so the grandmother.
Yeah, the grandma, and it even becomes actually part of Donna's personality where she has to protect Rose because Rose is getting harassed, and then Rose can't stand on her own 2 feet. And yeah, it's like I love that they tried, but it's like they didn't get anyone else to kind of help with the writing who understands that experience and has gone through that.
And even if they did, they obviously did not feel comfortable enough in that room to say anything. Because let me tell you, any trans person I know would have been like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
So what is the general feeling amongst the trans community that you're aware of?
Not great.
Really?
It's fun. What a great way to put it in. I think having David Tennant, he's got a queer child.
Yes.
I think that's relevant. It feels good. It's clearly coming from a good place.
Yeah.
I would start screaming if someone was like, hang on, let me ask their pronouns. Like, being that so aggressive about it. If you're, and it's that thing of, yeah, again, nice try. Like, it's thanks.
I mean, I've been privy to conversations where it comes up, how do you ask people their pronouns? And it comes from a good place, but the execution of it then becomes quite awkward and kind of patronizing, because the point was made, well, why won't you just use the person's name?
Yeah.
What type of conversation is it where you're referring to what someone has said and that you're using their pronoun rather than their name?
And also, in some situations, it's really unsafe to do that. Like, I'm not outing myself to every single person I talk to.
Why should you?
They don't deserve to know. They don't need to know anything about me. And it's so weird that they did this hand-holding thing of, you need to be asking everyone you meet. You need to, no, I'm going to have one conversation with you. I don't care what you refer to me as. If it's a casual like reference, chill. It's just very strange. And it feels, I'm trying to think of a way to say this isn't going to come across as really rude.
Tokenistic.
Yeah, it feels white knighting. Like, there's this great Nish Kumar bit about how when he was growing up, it was his family that were being attacked, and now we've got Ricky Gervais and we've got all those other people attacking trans people because that's the minority they can attack now. And I think Doctor Who addressing it is really good. I think addressing it in such a way that you know we're going to anger right-wing people is not it.
Yeah, because it wasn't at all gentle or subtle. It was so on the nose that I immediately just knew that, yeah, people are going to be on Twitter immediately just quoting that bit because it wasn't handled well.
I mean, Twitter's not real life, of course. What happens on Twitter doesn't happen in real life. Absolutely. And I'm not even sure in terms of taking a temperature of what ordinary people feel. And I think the press's non-reaction to it is quite significant because I don't know if they really know where it's going to fall. There's an interesting Clemmy Moore who writes for The Sun, and I'm not sure that she'll be there for much longer because she is she might class herself as an ally, but she's certainly written on why are you attacking this tiny minority? Why are you doing that? And really quite praised the episode. But of course, she's not speaking from within the community, and therefore it's that kind of whole thing. Isn't it good we're doing this? But there's ways of doing it.
Do you not think that's also because the press doesn't want to be labelled as transphobic?
Oh, absolutely. Well, there's sections of the press who wouldn't mind being labelled transphobic, I suspect. Or they don't mind, just get that camera again. You can tell I'm not good at technology.
No, it's great. It's adding to it.
That is family footage, and we all disappear. There'll be a section of the press that don't mind, I think, and that they will run, and they won't even encode it, which is why how quickly the Not My Doctor mob have resurrected, like the undead, and how far they're now unashamed, because they weren't afraid to be misogynists, and I don't think they're going to be afraid to be racist, which is interesting because if you look, my wife, when she's on things like Digital Spies forums around Strictly Come Dancing, where you always get, can't warm to her. Who is it you can't warm to people online, middle-aged women online? Oh, it's the young woman of colour. You can't warm to her. You don't know what it is. You just can't warm to her. And when people go, you're a racist, they get very offended. I'm not a racist. You brought race into it. You're encoding it. What's interesting is how far they won't even try and conceal the racism. And there's a homophobia around it, because there was that weird prurient discussion around Davois sexuality, as if it was anybody's
business.
Yeah, like suddenly you're going to have a sex scene with the Doctor in the TARDIS, and you know, heavens to Betsy, it's going to be the Doctor and a man, and you know, what's he going to do? You know, what's the Simpsons? No, it's Family Guy, isn't it, about Republicans? The simplest of facts is you want to raise your taxes and make your children gay. I don't think that's what they're setting out to do with Doctor Who. But the more febrile online community are clearly terrified that it's indoctrination. That's the terms they use.
But see, I can never understand people who think that way, because I mean, I never experienced queer characters until I was probably in my teens, and I was like, well, I already knew I was queer at that point. So having just straight content my whole life, that didn't make me straight.
It's because they're stupid.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing is genuinely media literacy. Especially when people say, oh, you shouldn't be making Doctor Who political now. And I was like, but it's always been political, just in different ways. And they're just unhappy with the current one.
Yes.
Not to be on that side. Don't make Doctor Who political. The Capaldi Christmas episode with Bill, where they bring back Hartnell, and they make him sexist and racist.
Yes.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Which he's not really sexist. He's not to that extent.
I mean, what they've done there, because there's lots of stories about William Hartnell, that William Hartnell was a racist and was an anti-Semite and was a homophobe. Now, how many of these stories are true or not? Because there used to be a claim that he wouldn't appear with Max Adrian, the Jewish gay comedian, comic performer, in Mythmakers, for all those reasons. But in fact, they've worked together before, and the way the script is that the Doctor wouldn't meet Prime, because the Doctor's outside with the Greeks. The story is set around the Trojan War, and so what they seem to have done is taken all these stories about Hartnell and overlaid them onto the Doctor. Although there was a very good critic online who did go and find lots of instances of the Doctor saying things that look sexist and look racist. But yeah, I think it's a strange thing that they did there. Also, the fact, because it was David Bradley who played William Hartnell playing the first Doctor, and now he's in playing the first Doctor. In terms of media literacy terms, it's weird, and then to give him all these negative characteristics.
I do like in that episode they imply the Doctor watches porn. That was confusing.
Well, I mean, they've had that running through Moffat, though, haven't
Yeah.
they? There's that business about the man who's not Rory in the 11th Hour, about his internet history, to clean that.
Yes.
But all the way back, it is Jeff, isn't it? But all the way back, Mickey telling Rose not to look at his internet history.
Oh yeah, that was.
So it's been just there in the.
It's just funny that he has it in his sunglasses.
Yeah.
That's. But there's something so interesting about that episode, because, as I've said, it's so obvious. I love Bill. I love 12. I think they're great. I think that one season is some of the best. I'm really sorry.
Oh no, season 10 is great.
I think it's some of the best season, like Doctor Who. It's so Doctor Who. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And then they have that ending, and then
It's not meant to be the ending. He's meant to regenerate at the end of the season. But the story is that Moffat was determined to hold a Christmas episode, and therefore he had to put that together. Clearly, he's dying at the end of the Doctor Falls.
Yeah, and then also, they've got your memories, so they're the person.
Yeah.
Why are we adding that?
Yes.
There's no need to add that. That's causing so many kids watch this. They don't need to know. That's going to cause some sort of philosophical breakdown for someone, and I think it's going to be me if I rewatch it at Christmas.
Oh no, don't rewatch it. It's not a great episode at all. I mean, it probably deserves a lot.
The shoehorned soldier in so they can have.
Mark Davies is the Brigadier.
Yeah, because they're like, well, I've had my best year.
Yeah.
Like,
having had the Brigadier turn into a Cyberman, his dead body rising from the grave in the end of series 8. In the other episode that freaked everyone out, the Don't Burn Me, the message from the grave. Moffat was going into some very odd directions at that point, and like really
he's
horrible.
Lost his friend.
You should not be allowed near. And I can't comprehend the decision of, hey, look at this beloved TV show. Let's give it to the Sherlock guy.
Well, see, what is sad is that didn't Moffat write Blink?
Yes.
And that's one of my favourite episodes of New Who ever. Like it was genuine, and to this day I'm genuinely scared of it. And so like I just don't like weeping angels. Okay, they freak me out, and they are meant to be psychological.
I'm scared of the weeping angels. It's fine.
Okay, but like he had proven himself to be competent, but then if he's jumping Sherlock and
Sherlock ruins Doctor Who at that point, I think, and the fact that they essentially make them the same character.
Yeah.
So the attempt to show visually the Doctor's thought processes in the 11th Hour is the same that they do with Sherlock in Study in Pink. I mean, his best script, I think, and it's Tennant's best story by a country mile apart from Turn Left, is Silence in the Library, Forest and Dead, which I utterly adore. And he can write for Tennant in a way a lot of people can't, because the temptation with Tennant is to make him squealing and comical, and actually when he does silent, and he's very good.
Really scary.
Jodie Whittaker as well. If you give Jodie Whittaker something other than asking her to do this Tennant act, she's phenomenal. She does seething fury so well, and you want more of that there, and you would look at that season very differently. Now, of course, the blood is already on it, and I think pick up some of the research you've done, Ether, about previous political readings. The sky seemed to fall in, as I recall, on Orphan 55, and the Doctor's speech at the end of that, which is heavy-handed.
Yes.
But it's a great episode, and it's already clear it's about environmentalism and Praxis, which is also a great episode. Praxis is the incredible shots in Praxis. There's something about environmentalism, and I suspect, but I may not agree with it yet, that a lot of people complain about that. If they're anything to do with some of the AstroTurf groups out of Tufton Street, it's to do with money from fossil fuels. Because Pertwee's run is full of environmentalism.
Yeah, there's tons.
And that's even just away from Malcolm Holt, who's one of the great script writers of the early 70s, who was a communist. And so his vision of the future of Earth, so you get Colony in Space and The Mutants and Frontier in Space. You get this trilogy about what Earth is like in the future, the Earth Empire. And it's the too much capitalism, too much industrialization has wrecked the planet. And that's why you have to leave the Earth. So it's there already. And similarly, if you go to what Cartman famously, when he is interviewed to be scripted, says, what would he do with the show? And he says, you bring down the gun. It's out and out pure anti-Thatcherism, and Happiness Patrol is a critique of late stage Thatcherism, and there is a persuasive argument that it's about Section 28. Thatcher government's forbidding promotion of homosexuality, because the reading of the man who dies on the fondant when it comes gushing out, he's got his pink overalls on, that it's something about gay activists being punished by the state. So it's there already, because no one's watching Happiness Patrol, and there's a weird thing in which they read Perv in a particular way. Not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. We may actually, that may bring us to a natural conclusion that I crept out of frame. So what do we hope for then? If we're not convinced by the current specials, what do we hope for the new season?
Well, I actually 90% enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed the second one more than the first, because it was very contained and it was just Doctor and Donna against themselves. And I know you didn't like that one as much, but
Maggie's seething. Another 2 hours off.
But it's
for the next episode.
I genuinely thought this is the first time I've been excited by Who in a very long time. And so I am excited for Ncuti's era. And I think I will just ignore everyone's hate of it, because I've seen Ncuti in, I don't know if you've watched him in Sex Education. No. He's
Have
fantastic.
you watched Barbie?
Oh yeah, no, he's fantastic.
We're going to do Barbie after Christmas, because both the DVDs are coming and stuff.
So. Yeah.
I thought he was phenomenal when he was doing the Shakespeare at the Coronation.
Yes, he is.
Which is the only bit of that I watched. I just wanted to look at it. I was transfixed.
He's an amazing actor.
He's magnetic, and he's beautiful as well.
He is actually. But that's the thing. People they say things before they've even seen his acting, and I genuinely have hope that he'd be a very competent and brilliant doctor. So I am excited. But yeah, I don't know if you'll have the same enthusiasm.
I don't want it to turn into another, we have a hot doctor. That's my fear.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't think there would be a romance element between him and
even without the romance element, I don't like the idea of the, because like for all of Tennant's run, they run into people and they're like, like,
they all
chill out. What's going on? But I think it'll be fun. I'm just sort of excited to have something to be excited. Like I'm excited to be excited about Doctor Who again. Hopefully it's not awful.
It will be really good. It will be really good. Of course.
Talk to me again in like a few months.
And I think we'll bring it to a halt there, and hopefully we'll reconvene again for more conversations about science fiction and fantasy. And yeah, keep an eye out on the YouTube channel for further videos to come. It'll be if